Welcome to One Foot in the Past. In tonight's programme, celebrating English Heritage's Year of Sculpture. Roger Bowdler embraces the art of death in the Gothic mysteries of graveyard grotesques and goblins. Alexander Stoddart celebrates the genius of the greatest sculptor the world has ever seen, Antonio Canova, the creator of the Three Graces. And sculpture in stone, water and light, the splendour of fountains and plans to remember Princess Diana. It may seem the stuff of Hammer House of Horror, but the art of the churchyard hangs heavy with meaning. Roger Bowdler celebrates some ancient yet still powerful images of life and death.
Sculpture hasn't always been consigned to the exclusive world of the art gallery. In churches all around us is a legacy of real importance. There is nothing weedy about this sculpture. No floppy bow ties pontificate about it. And it wasn't just made to look pretty. Instead, it had a deadly serious part to play in the greatest battle of all, the battle for people's souls.
After 8 centuries, this small and remote church at Kilpeck in Herefordshire continues to amaze. The outside is encrusted with men and monsters, grotesques and goblins. This is where the wild things lurk.
This is people's art, 12th century style. Thinking yourself back into the medieval mindset, you realise just how much anxiety and uncertainty there was all about. Churches were buildings of real mystique and power, and carvings like these are best understood as the fetishes of their day, laden with a symbolism that is now largely lost to us.
The Viking figures ensnared in creepers that flank the door tell us about the eternal struggle to be saved from the evil of the world. Beakheads hang menacingly around the door like harpies ready to pounce. Only the grapes representing the blood of Christ light the way out of this desolate landscape of sin and despair. The consequences of sin are plain for all to see. Heads are lined up like decapitated victims, Traitor's Gate style, warning man of his fragile existence and the dangers of damnation.
We're not talking Hobbit-like quaintness. Christian hope rubs shoulders with pagan fears. Carvings like these are the expressions of man's utter reliance on the church in an age when darkness lay all about. Outer threats, inner fears, all lay in wait.
But by the late Middle Ages, not even the church offered a safe haven. Now, fear had made its way inside and right to the heart of polite society. Here at Fifield in Oxfordshire lies the effigy of Sir John Gollifrey, veteran of Agincourt and lord of the manor. Resplendent in his armour and pudding basin haircut, here is the Christian soldier, the very picture of chivalry.
But look below, and you see things rather differently. A piteous cadaver, all jutting bones, drum-tight skin, sunken eyes and hollow cheeks. Thus is the gallant Sir John brought as low as humanly possible.
Why such abasement? Because of fear of the agonies of purgatory. Tombs like this, and they were quite fashionable for a period, were desperate appeals for prayers to be spoken for the souls of the dead, anything to ease the journey to heaven.
To my mind, there's a whiff of hypocrisy about a monument such as this, the sense of wanting to have it both ways. The upper effigy says, "Remember how I lorded it over you in life," while the lower one says, "And in death I will rub your nose in my entrails, just to make you realise how humble I was at heart." Even beyond the grave, a grandee like Gollafrey could make the lowly spectator shudder.
But everything changed with the Reformation. Out went the crucifixes, Madonnas and saints to be thrown onto the bonfire of the heretical vanities. But Protestantism could ill afford to chuck out the most potent visual weapon it had, the depiction of death. And it was into the churchyard that death moved. In the village of Elmore in Gloucestershire, there is no escaping the Grim Reaper.
There is rural charm here in buckets and great elegiac atmosphere. But we underestimate, at our peril, the impact that carvings like these would have had on the local audience.
The gravestones and tombs sermonise, and the message is starkly clear. The grains of life are running out. Wherever you look, Father Time and his ever-present henchman, Death, stare back at you. Angels may remind us of heaven, but there is no doubting who rules the roost on earth. Today, we are bombarded with images which fight like piranhas for our notice. But in 1700, very few would have demanded the attention of the public. The sight of these skeletons and skulls would have carried with them a clear warning. Remember, you too must die. But by the late 18th century, the Christian obsession with sin and punishment was being diluted with tenderness in the age of sense and sensibility.
But before the macabre monument became utterly extinct, the London mason Richard Westmacott the Elder produced one of the finest memorials ever to death itself.
In 1791, Mr. James Dutton of Sherborne, Gloucestershire, had a monument built to his memory. It towers over the altar and consists of a tableau showing the triumph of Christianity over death. The vanquishing angel, fleshy and physical, a woman very much on top, looks down on the cowering skeleton of death, who snarls viciously but impotently.
As a piece of virtuoso stone cutting, this figure of death really takes some beating. But the days of scary sculpture were over. Religious art now turned its back on such crude shock tactics, preferring more saccharine scenes from the life of Christ, or altogether safer memorials to the great and the good. The sculpture of fear had been banished from the church, and it has now set up camp in the art gallery, where everything is allowed and anything goes.